All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to This Is Not New in Conversation. My name's Els Fitzgerald. I work for the Digital Writers Festival. I'd just like to begin this evening by acknowledging that we meet on the lands of the First Nations Australians. This is a digital festival, so we're meeting from all different nations around the country. But we'd like to extend our respect to elders of all communities and also extend that respect to any descendants who might be joining us this evening. Tonight we've got Molly, Lukin and Mikaila Hanman Siegersma joining us to talk about their project that they've been working on over the course of the festival, This Is Not New, which has been a remixing of old MSN conversations that they've shared with each other. So it's been pretty amazing. So Molly is a poet, writer and broadcaster who has a chapbook of poetry called Intimacy and Other Bruises, and she's working on her forthcoming podcast on platonic, romantic and sexual intimacy called Sleepover. And Mikaila is a poet who lives on Kulin Nation's land in Melbourne. Throughout the session tonight, if you guys have questions for Molly and Mikaila, you can tweet them to Digital Writers Festival. Just use the hashtag DWF16 and we'll get to those questions at some point in the session. Cool. I might hand over to you guys.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Els.
How's it going, Mikaila?
Good. Well, I'm okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm doing okay. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, I guess it's like a funny time. I felt really immersed in this project the past 2 weeks, or I guess like a month since we started talking about it and the ideas behind it. And it actually has brought up a lot for me and has been really interesting, and also like a source of inspiration that I totally needed. And I felt really excited to have this conversation with you. And like, I have to admit that I feel pretty like, I guess, distracted by everything that's happening, and like processing those feelings about the election and, you know, the state of the world, the state of Australia, everything. It's like a little bit hard to see past a feeling of dread right now, which does make this conversation a little bit harder and kind of makes it difficult to care, to be like completely honest. But I feel like I still really want to talk about this project with you, and I feel like we've like talked about a whole bunch of interesting stuff in the past 2 weeks, and the two of us have like approached conversations that have been like, no, we should wait until the conversation. So like now we're here and we can have those and try and do it anyway.
No, completely. And I echo your feeling of like doom and despair, and a feeling of distraction. And I guess in the context of what's going on at the moment, talking about our poetry seems irrelevant or something. But I was actually speaking to my housemate in the kitchen before, and she was saying, I was like, oh, it feels really irrelevant. And she was like, actually, what about thinking about the necessity of like narrating our own worlds, or like trying to create our own worlds, or like and kind of like imaginary, like our own worlds within all of this, and the like incredible importance of like, you know, writing and artistic work that like creates narratives against those like, you know, dominant narratives which are incredibly toxic and destroy.
I agree with you. I feel like I also kind of feel comfortable in that irrelevance a little bit. Like I feel like it's okay to say this is relevant right now, but it doesn't mean that it's like always relevant. Like it just so happens that we have to have this conversation now because it's the festival, and like it's been an amazing festival and it needs to happen. But I feel like I feel comfortable with saying that it feels relevant, and I don't want to like make people feel like they have to engage with this as if it is relevant. I don't know.
Oh, completely, 100%, 100%.
Perhaps, but yeah.
Yeah. I have a poem by Ellen Van Niven just like to read, and I guess like yeah, I'll just read it, and then we can maybe start talking about our work. I guess I don't want to talk too much about her work, but I just want to like I really wanted to read this poem. It's from her collection Comfort Food, which is really, really amazing for anyone who's like streaming or like listening back to this who hasn't read this book. You should go out and purchase it. And it's a poem called Chips. Okay. Can I say white people really bore me sometimes? To be exact, I grow tired with what's unmentioned. Idling in surf club bathrooms, nothing wrong with the chips, but they're talking about Tasmania. My thoughts haunted by islands. Maybe I'm dying. I've had too many chips, teeth like stones. Take me to be flossed and cleaned. I need new souls sticking to the floor. What is happening with the dialogue of this country? They are killing people with words. If I'm not back soon, tell them I've had too many chips.
So good.
So good.
That person. Oh God.
Incredible. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Yeah,
Okay.
maybe we should, okay. Maybe we should start at the start. And I want to ask you how you found this project, but really what you said before, something about how this project has like brought out a lot for you and things that you kind of hadn't expected or something. So I want to talk about like your emotional landscape through this project, because I think that's, I mean, whatever you want to, however you want to word it, but I think that's like maybe interesting.
Totally. My emotional landscape feels like a complicated place that maybe is like difficult to articulate into words, but I will try to paint you a picture. And as you know, we've had conversations over the past few weeks, so you know how this has affected me to some degree. I guess like so the concept of the project was we wanted to give each other conversations that we had on the internet with people years ago, ideally on platforms on the internet that don't exist anymore. And this project came from the idea that I knew that I had a bunch of MSN conversations that I copied and pasted into Word documents when I was a teenager to save them and save them on my parents' computer, and they still exist on my parents' computer, and I wanted to do something with them. And so we came up with this idea that we would give each other different conversations that we had on the internet with people that we're not in contact with anymore. We had some like confusing stuff about whether or not, you know, it would be okay to like give conversations to each other with people if we didn't
privacy,
they didn't know. So we got rid of all of the names and everything. Sorry, I can hear people walking in my house and it's distracting me. So yeah, gave each other those conversations, stripped all the names, and then we decided to create something out of those, possibly poetry. Turns out we both like poetry a lot. So when I was trying to find the conversations, you know, it meant that I like went back and looked at these conversations that I had, and it was really, really interesting. I'm the kind of person that like hoards stuff. I've got letters and notes that I passed in class in a box in my room. And, you know, every now and then I sit down and I like really indulge with them and like read them, get really involved, get sent back there, and then I put the lid on the box again and I put it away. But this has been like, I've like gotten them and given them to you, and then you've given me yours, and I've been studying them. And it's kind of strange because whilst I'm like looking at your conversations and trying to interpret them and make something that I think is, you know, good, I've also been like thinking about the things that I gave you and thinking about those situations. And yeah, it's, I don't know, like an ongoing haunting kind of. And I mean, I don't want to ramble on for too long, but like, long story short is one of the conversations that I gave you, as you know, began as like the beginning of our relationship and a conversation, and then like flirty conversations, and then led to kind of the fallout of our relationship, and in particular a conversation about something that happened between us, which was really upsetting and awful, and I felt really, really crap about, and felt a lot of aggression towards this person through what I thought that they did to me.
Yeah.
And partly because of this project, and partly because of reading a book called Conflict is Not Abuse by Sarah Schulman, which I feel very conflicted about as a book and its political implications, and I don't actually know how I feel about in general, but it profoundly affected me in some way, and made me reevaluate this dynamic with this person. And in fact, I hadn't spoken to this person for 4 years since that conversation online, and I hadn't seen this person for about 6 years since the thing that happened. And I suddenly decided to contact them and like be like, hey, do you want to meet in person and talk about this conversation that we had on the internet that was really awful for both of us? And we did, and that happened last week, which was really a confronting experience, but really, really, really amazing also. I guess that's my emotional landscape. Again, feels very big. And
I don't think it has to be one thing or another constantly. And the thing that the work that you're referring to, just for people who are listening, the work that I interpreted from that conversation from Molly is the last piece, so it's alive in the backseat of my mind. And I feel like this one was actually the most difficult for me to write, because I kind of read all the other conversations that you gave me, and I was like, oh, yep, like some interesting dynamics going on. And then this last one, I was like, I don't know what to do with that. Like, I feel like by remixing it, I could bring a different context and a light to it that would actually be problematic in context to the original conversation. So I was like really aware of that, and kind of stumped as to what to do with all of those words. And then I guess like I kind of put together this one draft that was like, I guess it was very much like based on like the text that you'd given me. And then I think after you'd mentioned to me that you met with that person and you were kind of, you were thinking about it, I think I
didn't want to like say this before, but maybe it's important to say, because I feel like we're talking around it a lot, is like the conversation is about an incident of sexual assault that that happened between me and this person, that I confronted them about, and they rejected my confrontation about it. And that was the online conversation that I gave you. Sorry, I just realized that I hadn't said that, and I feel like that's why it was important. you to like engage with?
Yeah. So and then I guess like I wrote this like second draft of it, which you know, I still feel I just feel like very difficult about it. And I felt like, you know, when someone gives you this material, it's like, actually, what do you do with it? Like, it's actually really difficult. It's really, really hard. So I found that, because I like wanted to hold you in it, and I wanted to hold like the complications of like you meeting with this person later and talking about it in the poem as well, you know. So yeah, that was hard. And it almost feels like that poem isn't finished.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. And I think that's kind of okay. Yeah, I feel like I couldn't finish it. I feel like there were things that I felt like I couldn't finish, or it felt
Well, I nearly didn't give that piece to you. Like, I nearly didn't give that conversation to you. I actually looked at it, felt so physically sick and ill because I hadn't like thought about it in a long time, and that conversation was like 4 years ago. I'd never had a resolution with that person. And I feel like it's important to say also like that conversation happened on an online space, which it can be so like alienating, and you feel, you know, you can feel really alone in a conflict online, and feel
totally
good, and also really understand someone else. And you know, I, as I said, looked at it, felt really sick, and then spent a few days thinking about it and was like, actually, maybe that's something that I want to engage with again. And I should say, you know, I met with this person, and I felt really ashamed about the way that I communicated. I feel like I had to communicate in the aggressive way that I did because I was super, super angry when it happened. But I now look back on it and go, well, I didn't actually want to hear his side of it. Not that there's like sides, it's just like, I guess it's like more complicated than like cut and dry. And I think knowing you were like engaging with it, like kind of helped me engage with it, and was just like, it was just a bizarre, and I feel like our conversation in real life, you know, 6 years on, was really, really good. I feel really good about this person now, and the conversation like resolved, and felt really healing for me. And I feel like I wouldn't have done that had I not done this project, which is funny.
Maybe that's a segue into talking about being young. Sorry, please.
Oh, I just want, like, we've talked about me for like 20 minutes. I want to hear like your what the relationships were of the stories that you gave me, because I don't know. Because this is the other
okay
project which we maybe didn't communicate, which was that we didn't tell each other. Oh my God, there are children next door banging shit. Really annoying. We didn't tell each other. And screaming. We didn't tell each other what the relationships were when we gave each other the things. We just like left it open for the other person to like interpret. So when I was writing those pieces, I was like just kind of guessing and projecting my own shit onto them. But so like, tell me what your relationships to those conversations were.
So the first conversation that I gave you, which ended up being no show, that was a relationship between me and this person that I went to school with. And I had a crush. I went to kindergarten with them, and I had a crush on them for years and years and years. And I remember having an MSN conversation, which I've lost and which wasn't actually the conversation that I gave you, but I had one MSN conversation with them where I proclaimed my love to this person and this person chose someone else. And it was like, this person,
I knew it.
do you like this person or do you like this person? And they were like, and it was like ... this person. And I was like, no. And then, so that was like when I was like, this is grade 5 or something, MSN, blah, blah, blah. Then like years on, I'm like 17 and I'm at a party and we kissed, and then it was so incredibly awkward and I still felt really deep things for this person and they just like really ignored me and blah, 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 blah. And then I started like, I don't know if I can say this live to out. I've started buying marijuana. I started buying weed off them. And anyway, and
I don't know if I can say this on the air. Babe, we're not on TV.
I know. Yeah, and then we like started this friendship where like this person, like I was giving this person something and this person was giving me something. And I would go and hang out in their shed after school all the time. And like they would work on their car and I would just like hang out with them and talk to them. But like, you know, like that ended up being, I guess, like our bonding. But it was, and I guess, you know, like eventually I didn't really want to be with this person. Which was like, but I think like reflecting on that conversation, it was like, well, I really needed, like I really wanted this person to recognize me and see me, you know, and like there was just so much silence from them. And I was like, and that like from the internet, when you get silence on the internet, you know, when you're crushing hard on someone and you like, you know, they don't want you back, which is fine, you know, they don't have to explain that, like really at the end of the day, like if they didn't want me, that's like they don't have to explain that, you know, like they just don't want to be with me, right? Like that silence, I think, is that like kind of like youthful, like, why don't you reply to my messages? Blah. Like it's like calling out, like, and this like constant echo and just being like, what the fuck? Like,
so like, you know, in the conversation that you gave me is so present is their lack of engagement with you and what you're saying. And I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that was, so I guess I got that right.
Yeah,
like
incredible. Yeah.
It's really, yeah. Reading other people's messages is weird. It's a weird thing because it's just words right on the page and you're like, I don't know, there's less to work with than when you're like watching people have a conversation and you can like visually see a dynamic, which I think I'd rely on a lot. But like trying to get meaning. I mean, the first time that I read the conversations that you gave me, I was like, I actually felt a little bit bored or something.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh, maybe this project isn't very interesting because reading other people's conversations isn't very interesting unless you know the like emotional turmoil behind what's happening. And then like part of the project was like imbuing it with emotional turmoil and like dragging out a narrative from like however many conversations through the internet. And it was really fun.
Yeah, and those words that I gave you like created a certain context for you, and you made it something that you felt like you could connect with through like the narrative that you built.
That like you and I feel like we, you know, we get along in many ways through our similarities and potentially have a lot of like similar experiences. And so like I'm sure that my ability to project my own shit just like happens to also reflect the reality. So I mean, I guess it would be interesting what this project would look like with people who like don't have the same life experiences.
Yeah,
you know?
very much so. It would be interesting.
can I ask you a more like poetry based question? What was your creative process or like approach to taking those conversations and like making them into something else?
Yeah. I feel like for the first two, I read the conversations over and over, and I guess like placed myself in this kind of like I guess the context of like being a teenager and being on MSN a lot and those feelings. And so the first two were actually narrative driven in a way that I like created a context around the conversations that weren't necessarily you know, all of the words from the conversations just kind of like cut and paste or remixed around. And that was like, yeah, that was I enjoyed doing that because I don't do much like fictionalized stuff in my own work. So that was like, I just like found it interesting that I went down that path because I normally wouldn't necessarily feel, that doesn't feel comfortable for me or something. And then, yeah, the last poem was pretty much just text based and pretty much was just like lifted from the original conversation, which, yeah, I enjoyed doing both of those things. So like creating a narrative around the conversation, and I guess like changing a bit of the context or thinking like through and like beyond the original context of the conversation, and then with the last one trying to stick kind of to it or something.
Yeah. And the last one was the one that you had the most difficulty with.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Like your
Definitely.
response or whatever.
And I think, yeah, I think that was actually purely my difficulty was the content. Yeah, I don't think that it was, yeah, it was purely because of the content. Yeah. How about you? How did you go about constructing?
I did a lot of cut and paste, and I did a lot of like I'd read the conversations and then I would do like free writing for a few pages and just like out stuff and then put it, I guess my poetic practice or whatever is a lot of like writing lots and lots and lots of crap and then like picking out the good stuff. So that was my with most of them, with the first two, with No Show and what did I call the second one? With No Show and Disruption, yeah. Which I found really fun.
Yeah.
And I think I really got into my like character in those pieces were you, or my, you know, perception of the person that was having the conversation on this side. And it was really like a one-sided thing. And then the last one, which is the one called Problems with Any Girl, that one I felt a little bit mean reading that conversation because I read that conversation first and I just felt really sorry for the person that you were having the conversation with. And I felt like it was like the flipped situation of the first one from No Show where you are like trying to get something from this person. The other one was the other way. And I think that both of those were really different despite like them being flipped because of like the gender dynamics that were existing in those conversations. Like I'm assuming that both of those conversations were with teenage boys. Yeah. And I could sense that that this like gendered way of communication between the two of you. And in the last one, I wanted to show this person's kind of desperation to get something with you that didn't really have anything to do with you, and that didn't really require your participation or consent in it, and that felt like quite entitled. And and I started to like write some stuff around that, but then I kind of like realized that the best way to show that entitlement was not through naming it, but just like showing it. And so I ended up just taking the conversation and like cutting it down and distilling it into like these specific moments. And like I did edit some bits to like make it sound better or like read better as poetry. But a lot of it is straight out of the horse's mouth or whatever.
Yeah.
And reading it over once I'd like distilled that down, I was like, oh, I feel like maybe I'm like mischaracterizing this person, or like I don't know.
No, I think
I think projecting like every nice guy of OK Cupid onto this person, like you know.
Oh my god. No, I actually just found what you said really interesting. That thing of like this person's way of talking to me didn't really require my participation.
Yeah,
like,
and
which
your participation in that conversation seemed like actually totally irrelevant. Like he wanted your responses, but he wasn't really listening to them. And also like your responses seemed so detached and bored, like you kind of instinctively knew that it didn't really matter. It was like
yeah, it's amazing. Actually, I think my favorite one of yours was the disruption one. It made me feel so many things.
I felt so many things writing it.
just that line, which like I know I said, you know, it would be different if you were kissing a boy or if you kissed a boy. Like I remember writing that. And I remember not even thinking about writing that, right? And I remember having a crush on this person, you know, like I had a crush on her. I'm like, what the fuck? How did I fucking not know that, like, you know, when we were like telling each other we wanted to marry each other?
It was
like, what?
Oh my God.
And that kind of like policing from, you know, when she kind of like spoke about her, like, you know, her boyfriend doing this thing, you know, about whatever, you know, he thought your intentions were this and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, wow, just like seeing that, like I remember sending it to you and going, that was kind of fucked, that conversation. And then like you like seeing that reflected in your words was like, whoa, like, wow, that's really, wow. You know, just like it was kind of
like when you watch a TV show and they don't like tell you that the characters are gonna be gay, but you just know.
Yeah.
What the characters aren't gay and they're never gay in the show, but you know, you're like, I know, I see you. You're a fictional character made by a straight person, but I still see you. It was like that. I'm just gonna turn like dark in my room. Yeah. that was my favorite, right? For sure.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed.
Can you read a little bit of that? Like any part that you want to, like just choose, I don't know, if you want to read a little bit of it.
I could give it a shot. I've not read it out loud ever before, but I could give it a shot.
There is no better time.
Okay, you know, I was thinking about this though, Mikaila. about how these poems would be performed live, because I feel like they'd be really kind of confusing without the fonts to tell you when another person is speaking. And because I don't think that doing different voices is going to make for good spoken word. But
You know what?
Maybe
You know what?
we could, like, you could be the person. Do you want to do that?
Okay. Yeah. So am I italicized or am I?
You're italicized.
Okay, I'm italicized. Okay.
So I am the narrator of the poem.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then you can read one of yours, please.
Okay, most definitely.
Needs to be a fair exchange. Thank you.
Of course. Of course.
Okay.
So where would you like to start?
I'll just start at the beginning.
Okay.
Disruption. Drank chai tea, had mushies in it. Men would just not stop. Get the hint I didn't want to kiss them. It was fun. Pretty fucked, actually. Mushy trip, night of frying. Bad trip, got in a car. Crack pipe car, tripping hard. Almost killed myself. Kissed a dreamy boy. Collapsed and I was Jack of the Beanstalk. Was so stupid. Found out he has been fucking my best friend, and everyone has known. Everything seems really fucking hectic at the moment. Sorry for unloading on you. We should run away together. I hate everybody. I want to confess, thread a needle of purpose through the lanes. Between the letters, this instant message assists a city. Crash on a highway of keys at your feet. I hate everybody. I love you seriously so much.
Beautiful. Could you somehow give me those drunken photos of us? And the bra ones for me?
Unquiet this act of confession. Please let me move consciously, like your teeth as you read me.
Help, I'm crying.
Baby, what's up?
It's fine now, but before he got pissed off, we kissed. He was like, everyone will think you as a slut. And he thought you were thinking sexual things. I explained, and he got more bitter. And then he was like, I feel better. Sorry and whatnot.
Shit, sister. I didn't even think. The fact we kissed, an expression of my love for you. You are so fucking divine. It's a different story to kiss a boy. Sorry if I cause any disruption, darling. I really miss you.
You.
Sorry, I just need to let off some steam. Yeah, maybe let's stop. It's really long. I just realized.
It is really long. It is really long. And we're at 8:08, which is fine. But yeah, I just thought we'd do a time check. I'm just going to turn on my light too. Hang on.
I think I'd really like it if you read the second one.
Okay.
Wait. Big?
So the second one is pissed in the back seat.
Oh, I meant your second one. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, maybe you should read the last one.
Okay. All right. I'm just thinking where we can start from.
Wait, do you want me to participate in this? I don't.
You don't? No. Okay. I'll just read it. Are you okay if I just read it? Okay. I'm starting from the start. Alive in the backseat of my mind. I'm not used to pretty boys telling me I'm beautiful, and I'm a lot more truthful when drunk. I found your wallet on fire at my party. Ask me any question and my presence is lost, but it helps to own a phone. Later, they found me not at home, although I was happy sitting in my own place, my apartment, my little mailbox. far away from when we first met. It's very cold. Brilliant street art, strange, interesting books. Those goddamn sense-enhancing stories make me spend more time alone in the shower. Hello, sweet pea. Xmas was lonely but lovely. Delta of Venus, red wine, alone apartment. The other night, I dreamt in German, and the streets were a fucking war zone. I joined the fun. Why don't you live around the corner from me, drink a little now and then, put something in my letterbox sometime. Help me relax, sweet pea. Sweet pea? Love it. Something says, so do you still like boys? What a goddamn question. Yes, I still like boys. Are you trying to provoke me? Something says, provoke no, ask yes. I wonder why you ask, why you care. Could it be that you recognize yourself in these things I've written? Something says, okay, I'm going to leave. Clearly you have it all sorted. How about saying, hey, I know I did some stuff that might not have been okay. Something says, I really wanted to be with you, but you had a thing for girls. That was a bit full on, and I find it interesting. Nice, you find it interesting. People tried to pull power from me, and I don't find it interesting. Something says, at the time I was confused about whether you were straight/gay. That's not what happened. Something says, you're going to have some big problems later in life. You asked, I spoke truths. This isn't feminist literature, it's consent 101.
Thanks, Mikaila.
Thanks, Molly.
I was wondering how you brought up this question last time we spoke. You wanted to answer it. How has this project influenced your practice outside of the project as your role as a poet?
I think using found text is a really great way of, like you said before, that the project's been really great because it's like really pushed you into creative work that's make you write again and write poetry again. And I feel like sometimes yeah, I don't know, it can feel I mean, everyone feels stagnated if they're you know, when they're a writer sometimes and they feel like they are struggling to find inspiration. And I guess like found
really intimidating.
Yeah. And I guess like found text can be, I found text to be really an interesting place to start. And even like the very fact of it being found text from like someone else in a very specific context, I found like the intimacy of that is quite intense. And so that kind of like the intimacy that I guess you discover by reading this found text from someone else that, you know, like we both know each other. And so like having that, like not kind of gaining that into like intimacy from these conversations, I found like, yeah, a really kind of fruitful place to start from, or if not fruitful, like interesting, and made me think a lot, and made me feel complicated, and made me feel like strange, which is like sometimes a good place to write from, like feeling complicated and being like, oh, there's so many things here, and I'm feeling like I'm not sure what to say about it, but I'm gonna start, and interesting things can come from that, I guess.
Yeah, totally. I feel similarly. I don't think that I've made poetry with like found text before.
Yeah.
Maybe like a long time ago, but like not recently.
Yeah.
And it kind of sometimes felt like using text that already existed and like cut and paste poetry, and also like block out poetry as well.
Yeah.
Like having something and then just like blocking out the noise and like bringing forth meaning. And that is really, that's super creative, because you get to choose where you're putting meaning, and you are the author of that meaning, just regardless of whether that text existed before you as a poet is using it, and before it became poetry. And like that's really, I think, like I'll probably do that again in the future if I feel like it's hard to get started. And also, I guess it was kind of this lesson of like projection, in that like I was working with your stuff and at first I tried really hard to like be like, I have to create a narrative here based on what I feel that Mikaila was feeling when it was happening to them, and I have to figure that out and like become a detective of the text or something. And then I realized that I can actually write poetry like that, and I find it really difficult to write outside of my like direct empathetic experience. And that's something that I'd really like to work on. But but I think it's also a really powerful way to write, and like makes me write the best. And and so once I dropped that idea that I had to like create something fictional that is gonna reveal the truth about what the conversation was, and I just like full blown went really like projected all of my teenage feelings onto these conversations that I never had, but while I was working on them really felt like I was having. And like I felt like really invested in the characters, and I was projected onto that, and that was fun and interesting. And like that's not how I expected to go about writing, but it was good. So we've got like 10 minutes left. Should we check to see if anyone's asked us?
I've just checked and it doesn't look like anyone's tweeted us yet.
That's great.
Which
because our conversation is so engaging that like no you know. Did you learn anything about yourself, Mikaila?
I think I loved I think there was one piece that I like wrote about yours, which was like me like projecting like I don't know, just like being a teenager and like feeling queer, but like completely like just like completely cutting myself off from that. And so there was one piece where I felt I was a lot about like loss and desire and like queerness, and I guess like having those conversations from like when I was a young teenager and like reflecting on them made me feel sad, but there was also something joyous in like being able to like for us both to look at those conversations and go like, oh, like what do we see in them now, and like what kind of like awareness can you have looking back on your own voice, and like what does that feel like to see your own voice in someone else's hands that actually kind of highlights all of those things. It's like quite an amazing it's like it's quite an amazing feeling, I guess. So what have I learned about myself? I don't know if I've learned anything conclusive, but there's like an interest in like I guess like looking at the way that like I formulated my identity through the language that I used, and the internet being something that like archives those things and can be this thing where you can like have a look at this thing and you're like, oh wow, like that was really fucked, the way that I spoke about like my sexuality and like my feelings towards like my really good friend, even though I had a crush on her, like, you know. And then yeah
something that we didn't really talk about, but which I like was kind of why I wanted to do something with those conversations, is like that thing of, you know, when I started having conversations on MSN, it's like MSN was really new. The concept of having conversations online and like forming friendships and relationships and intimacy through chat was like a really new thing. Instant chat forums, but instant chat. And now it's so normal and it's part of my everyday intimacy with like most people in my life. And I think that's really interesting how my relationship with chat and text has changed. Instant messaging has changed, where it used to be this thing that did seem, I don't know, something was kind of
like separate.
Yeah, it felt, maybe. And it felt like a world that no one else was kind of a part of, and that we were like, it felt private. It felt really, whereas like, I don't feel that private about my chats with people these days. I feel way more secure and private when I'm having a one-on-one conversation in person, you know. There was something like kind of otherworldly about it then, and now, because it is so much a part of just like my everyday life and my everyday intimacy with people, it doesn't seem otherworldly anymore. It's part of my world and it's part of my reality. And there's something there's something about that, and about the separation from your reality, and like being a teenager and having all of those angsty feelings and actually like not knowing how to communicate properly at all, especially when you've got good feelings, big feelings, and having those conversations on a platform that like no one else has had that adolescent experience of communicating through that platform before, and it's a completely new thing. Like it's like just kind of like angst like squared, you know, or something. And maybe that's
totally,
you know, I don't know, maybe that's just like my perception of that. And you know, maybe the internet is still a place, I know it definitely is still a place of, you know, intimacies that are complex, and always going to be, you know, but I think that was like a specific time, maybe.
It was a specific time, I think, because like
MSN, what a weird time.
no, it was there was something completely new about like this thought of being able to talk to your friends at school and then saying, I'll see you on MSN, like, you know, like see you there kind of thing. Whereas like now, I mean, you're just always on Facebook. Always like, I mean, like,
you're always online.
Like of that, the concept of, we joked about that thing about BRB, which is like, it's like, you would say BRB if you're going to get like a drink of water or something, but like, you know, you wouldn't say like, if you're talking to your friend on like Facebook Messenger or whatever, you wouldn't say BRB going to get a drink of water. Like, you just like bring your Facebook Messenger with you on your phone. Like, you know, it's like.
Yeah. And also like, did MSN, I feel like I should have looked this up. Like the demographics of people that used MSN. I feel like in my imagination of what MSN was, it was like only teenagers that ever used it.
Only young.
But maybe that's because I was a teenager, you know, in Australia using MSN. I'm sure that that's like completely very small fragment. like MSN is so tied in my head with being adolescent and being confused and having catastrophes of the mind and heart and sexuality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now it's gone. Now it's gone. They took it away.
I mean, there are other things.
Skype.
Now. And there's,
what is
I'm
there?
sure, like, technologies that exist now that won't exist soon, sometime.
Yeah.
I mean, who
Exactly.
fucking knows in the future? But
we don't know. We don't know. So on that note,
cheers.
We've really enjoyed. I've really enjoyed chatting to you, Molly. I've really enjoyed making this project with you. And for for what?
I feel closer to you.
Yeah,
I recommend this.
What a good bonding experience. What a good way to get to know someone. What a good way to get to know someone's teen alter ego.
Next time I use Tinder, I'm going to be like, look, I feel like the way that we're going to get to know each other, like the fastest, is if you just send me some of your old messages from the internet and I'll send you mine and then write a poem about it and email it to me. That's actually a great pickup line.
Oh my goodness, that is really, it's really intense, but I feel like if people are really into it, like it could be a great experience.
And also maybe find out that someone was a jerk really, really fast, you know?
Totally. Yeah. Okay,
I think we are supposed to like say goodnight now.
Okay, beautiful. Thanks folks for listening in. If you did, have a great evening. See you, Molly.
Bye, Mikaila. Good night.